Aloha.
Talofa.
And welcome to Maoli Talk. I'm Delia.
I'm Fosi.
And we're your hosts. We're the Ulimas. Welcome to our hale. And
Welcome.
today, on this episode, we're going to be talking about gender roles. Gender roles.
Yes.
Men and women growing up in our household as Polynesians.
What it was like growing up as a Samoan young man.
Yeah. And I want to talk story a little bit about kind of what you observed growing up with mom and dad and how they influenced kind of your view on gender or as a Samoan male. Because traditionally Samoan culture is pretty patriarchal, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What about in a traditional Samoan household? Is it usually the father or the grandfather making the decisions?
Absolutely. Usually the grandfather, the fathers are the ones that make the decisions.
Or the matai.
The matai make a majority of the decisions for how the family is run and how the families are to operate.
What was it like in your home with dad? Dad and mom?
That's a great question because it was different. You know, it's way different. My dad had, there were two sides to my dad. You know, there was the traditional side, and then he had this other side that a lot of people don't know that they didn't see.
Because dad was pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Like if you knew him, he was like, he was a tough guy. He was a tough guy. He came off as very traditional, very fa Samoa, right? But really, like you said, there's another side of him that most people didn't see or know.
Yeah.
And what was that side like?
So my dad growing up, he was very disciplinarian. You know, he was very strict on us. You know, he didn't want us to like fool around, go to school. When you're done school, come straight home. There's no dilly-dallying, there's no going anywhere. And then we always had chores every day, no matter what. And then one thing that stands out that I really love my dad and that, you know, is the Samoan language. You know, at home, you know,
so he spoke Samoan.
Spoke Samoan. So we came here.
And that's your first language.
Yeah, we came here. I was 5 years old, and this was back in 1975. And and so my dad's thing was at home we speak Samoan. When you go out, you speak English. It was just like that. It was plain and simple. Samoan
so he was
at home.
very clear about that, about the language being spoken at home.
Absolutely.
So and that's why all of you understand or speak Samoan. And I definitely want to talk more about that, not necessarily in this episode, but in other episodes about the language and how the generations are, whether or not they're keeping the language or are our children speaking English or Samoan. But in your home, dad spoke Samoan. But as far as the gender role goes, as far as kind of that patriarchal role, was he very much that patriarch, and did he make all the decisions all the time?
So that other side that I mentioned about my dad and why he's unique is that he wasn't, yes, he was traditional, but yet at the same time, him and my mom really made the decisions for our family. He really together. It was a shared responsibility with mom and dad. You know.
And do you think that was unique for a Samoan couple?
I think so. Yeah, because most homes, from what I see from my friends growing up, the Samoan, the dad made most of the decisions on everything.
What about other things at home, like chores and like money or working? Was that divvied out a certain way, or like you said, your dad made sure you guys all had chores, and there were like what, 5 boys, 6 boys,
6 of us,
6 boys and 1 girl eventually.
So dad.
Did he cook, clean?
Yeah, both parents. My dad was a great cook. You know, dad is such a
and
great
is that
cook.
typical? That I know in Samoa the men cook.
It is, the men do all the cooking.
But how
like
about
that.
when you moved to
when we moved
Hawaii?
Here in Hawaii, you know, a lot of the male, they have to work, you know, and you know, be the breadwinner and then provide for the family. But then, so with mom and dad, my mom controlled all the money. So my dad made the money, my mom controlled the money, and there was a shared responsibility, like I said. And at the same time, my mom was also very good about, you know, taking care of us. Not cooking, she cooked, but not as well as my dad. My dad was the best cook of all. My mom definitely has great dishes that she makes, but my dad.
But dad was the main cook.
Dad was the main cook, and he instilled that in us. He taught us.
And that's why you cook.
He taught us all that, and you know, my dad, even though he was very strict on us, you know, he always wanted the best for us. He brought us here because he wanted us to do better, get a higher education, and just,
so dad and mom really emphasized education as well.
Absolutely, it was really big, you know. And dad always tried to help us, even though my mom and dad only had a middle school education. You know, he always tried, because my dad, he was such a smart man in so many ways.
He was a very wise man, and he was very well respected, and very articulate. You know, and then
he was so ahead of his time, my dad.
You know, when we think about genders, you know, my father-in-law, he just passed away just a few months ago, and we had the privilege of having him in our home for several years throughout the course of our marriage. He was quite an anomaly, I think, for me as a non-Samoan woman marrying into a Samoan family. You know, they say you marry a Samoan, you marry the whole family, and that was definitely true. But it was such a privilege and a blessing. And one thing, you know, honestly, I have to say, growing up, grew up in Kalihi, right? We knew each other, so we've known each other since.
Oh man, forever.
Forever. Like so since I was 12. And you were 15.
In the house.
Yes, Kalihi, Camford Road, KPT. And, you know, all my friends were Samoan. I hung in the housing, but I would tell people I didn't want to marry Samoan because my friends' parents were, you know, they were really strict. I didn't really like the dynamics that I saw between their parents per se at the time. And maybe, you know, there's always exceptions to everything, of course. I don't want to stereotype or pigeonhole anyone, but you know, there was some rough stuff going on, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to marry that, but with you, we've been married now almost 27 years. You know, I think you really, truly are a testament to the way that your parents raised you, but as a Samoan male, especially dad, he was very traditional in a lot of ways, very Samoan, but he would cook for us, and you cook, you clean, you take care of the kids. There's no, like, gender thing. And I think one of the most important things that I saw, and the thing that I was most impressed by or that touched me, was that dad was really affectionate and loving.
Yeah.
And that was not very common, right?
No, I didn't know. Coming up, knowing a lot of Samoan dads, they weren't, you know, very affectionate. Well, at least some of the friends that I knew, the ones that I knew. But my dad was.
So it wasn't common for, well, and even not even just Samoan culture, in other cultures, for dads to say, I love you, I love you, son. It's much more common in this day and age. But
Back then, my dad was unique. He would, so one of the biggest thing was after he gave us, like, man, he used to whoop us really good. And then
dirty lickings.
Sasa. And then, so he sasa really bad. And then the thing that my dad always did was follow it up with a lecture. And my dad can talk. He can talk, he can talk and talk. And he was so wise. My dad was so wise. You know, he just knew so much ahead before, you know, anything.
I mean, he was an innovator. I think he was innovative.
I think so.
You know.
Absolutely. And so he would just lecture us. And then after that, he would follow with the love and kiss, you know. And he would say, oh, you know, I give you lickers because I love you, you know. And I was like, yeah, right, Dad. You know, back then. But then now, you know, looking back on it, you know, yes, it was definitely my dad and my mom, you know, they're definitely pioneers in their own right with a lot of things that they taught us as young kids growing up. Now looking back on you know, those experiences. So
well, and I think, you know, it trickles down to our children, right? When I see you with our sons, and that's really something because we don't have daughters. One day granddaughter, but we have two sons that you are affectionate with them, loving, hold hands still with my teenager, and my teenager is very affectionate. Hold hands, say I love you, hug. You know, and the other thing, which I have to say about my dad too, my dad was very traditional, very conservative, but my dad taught me how to ask for forgiveness at a young age. And I noticed even with your dad, like he would say, he was super stubborn. Like, I can't even explain, like, if you are on his wrong side, not a good thing, but he would apologize after. You know, he would apologize and he would ask for forgiveness. And that is something, and I see that with you and your brothers. You guys are very loving, very affectionate, very funny, but also that ability to, like, be emotionally open. I think that is something I've always appreciated about you, that you you're loving, you're emotional, you're affectionate. And I was worried about marrying a Polynesian.
It's okay to be all of that.
Yeah,
let me tell you guys.
Yeah,
it's very okay to be all of that.
I think it's imperative in this day and age.
It's important, yes.
And because the boys that we grew up with too, especially you were raised in the housing, there are other choices that young men made when they didn't. I think when you don't get that nurturing, right? A lot of gang banging, a lot of crime, a lot of poverty, but shifting a little bit. So even though it seems like you're raised in a traditional Samoan home where like it was patriarchy, it really wasn't. It really was more of a shared responsibility, and
it definitely was.
And your role models were both dad and mom.
My mom and dad.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for me in my home, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was the breadwinner, but he passed away when I was 6, and my mom had to raise 6 of us by herself, ages 4 through 19, and my mom, I feel, was very old school too, where like she was very much about you serve the man and you do stuff for the man, and she was raised with that patriarchy. Now in Hawaiian culture, it is matriarchal, but my mom was also part Japanese and Portuguese and Hawaiian. And even when we were older, I remember when we first got married, she would tell me, I would argue all the time with her about chores at home. How come the boys didn't do more? How come I had to do this and this? And she said, you got to do this because one day you're going to get married. And I said, no, I'm going to marry someone that cooks and cleans. She goes, your husband going to lick you. Not that there was ever domestic violence or that I would ever condone that. But so when we first got married and she told me like, oh, go make your husband a plate. I'm like, excuse me, he has 2 legs and 2 arms at work. She was so pissed at me. She was so upset that I would say that. And when she saw you like make food for me and serve me or serve her, she was just like blown away. It's not too late. Believe me, that ship has sailed. It's the bird is flown. But that's okay, honey. You're so good at serving me. But my mom just loved that about you. And so, but what's interesting, hon, is that even though my mom was in that sense super traditional about serving the man, she, as soon as my dad passed away, even though she was a housewife, she got up and she worked, and she was also ahead of her time. She was a working woman. She did it all, and I definitely am a strong working woman, and I'm strong because of her and her example. And even though I thought she was backward and old school back in the day, really I am who I am because of my mom. And so I really think that this is, I think we want to pay tribute to our parents. And
absolutely.
As far as gender roles, it is, I think in this day and age, what works for us and what, what we make it. In our own homes and in your homes, we want to hear about what works for you and your ohana. Was gender a big thing growing up as a Polynesian? And how do you choose to run your homes and your marriage and your children now? What's important? Please let us know. Subscribe, comment.
Please. Subscribe, comment.
Hit us up on social media.
If you agree, if you disagree with us, let us know. Tell us how you feel.
Or share your story. We want to hear about your moms and dads as
Absolutely.
well. We love our moms and dads and our grandparents.
We want to highlight your stories in this community we're trying to build, because this is what it's all about. Sharing our stories about our families and about one another and how we can learn from one another. So, yes, thank you. Please share.
Thank you. And until our next episode of Maoli Talk, talofa, aloha, ahui ho, malamapono. Take care and take care of each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
2, 1.